Welcome everybody. In this video we are going to talk about Revit options. So the options is the panel where you can sort of customize Revit to meet your own personal needs and requirements and sort of set things up to be more efficient, I guess, with the program. To get to the Revit options, you actually either need to be in a project already, or you need to use the home button. So I'm just going to open up a project here so you can see how you can access the options. So project's open, you go to the File tab, and here's the button for options right here. So just click on it to open it up. Or, I just escaped out for a second. You can't access it from the sort of intro start screen, but if you hit the home button here, you can then again hit the File tab and go to the options button. So I just click on that. It brings us to our options menu or options window. So we have our general settings where you can set your save reminders or the synchronize with central reminder. So if you're doing work sharing, you can have reminders to synchronize your file so other people in the group or that you're doing your work with would have basically your updates to the file on a more regular basis. You can set your username here. Journal files, so these are just sort of tracking files about your Revit sessions, and then you can do your work sharing update frequency, more frequent or less frequent, so more frequent or manual updates. So this basically updates the files, the work sharing files, and checks more frequently. So that's the general tab. The user interface basically allows you to customize which tabs are shown by default when you start your program up. You can customize keyboard shortcuts here, so you can choose different commands and add in various different keyboard shortcuts for all sorts of different commands in Revit. There's also the double click options. So if you double click on different elements, what do you do with them? So if you double click on a family, you open the family editor. If you double click on a sketch element, you open the sketch editing element. So it just allows you to sort of configure what the double clicking does. Enable recent files list at home. So when you go to the home tab, you can access your Revit recent files. Clearing sections, so basically how you handle the ribbon and tabs when you're switching. And then you can also adjust a light or a dark theme for Revit. So you can see the headings switch to different colors. So I'm going to switch it over to dark. I haven't used dark in a while, so might as well. And you can also turn on your hardware graphics acceleration if it's available. The graphics tab allows you to set some various different colors for some of the different elements. This temporary dimension text, if you find it too big or too small, you can adjust the size here. So just again, some configuration, some graphics, some visual aesthetics for when you're working on a program. Hardware information about your program, about your system. File location, so this is where your template files are going to be, where the default path for your user files are. The family and template files, so usually this is going to point to a Revit library somewhere. Root path for point clouds, so if you're using point clouds, where would you get them from? Rendering, so additional render appearance paths. So this is just, again, if you've got some more render elements, things like that to be working with. Check spelling, so you'll be able to set up your library or a dictionary of words, ignore words in uppercase, so it just sets up your dictionary and how the check spelling will work. Again, some visibility and some settings for your steering wheels and your view cube on how it represents on the screen, things like that. And if you have any macros or sort of automatic things, pre-programmed things set up in the program, you can work with them, enable them or disable them or whatever you need to do with them here. So you won't need to use all of the aspects of this. The default settings are actually not horrible. Some people do like to go in and reset their save interval reminders. The file locations, if you've got things saved, if you have your own personal libraries and you don't want to use the default Revit libraries, you might want to point to those different directions. The the user interface with the keyboard shortcuts, that's a big one, and the default tabs is a big one that people will customize to show only the tools that they need. It makes the ribbon a little more manageable, a little less cluttered if you sort of focus it down on just the tasks that you typically will use. So those are the Revit options. So again, there's a lot of options in here, a lot of things to go through. We touched on a bunch of them. We didn't really get into too much detail on them. But again, just take your time, go through the different ones, and it's always fun to play with stuff and see what the different aspects will do or how things change as you work through the program. All right, I'll see you in the next video. Welcome everybody. This video we're going to talk about Project North and True North settings in a Revit project. So you can see in my sample file that I've got here, I just have a really basic site plan thrown up here. Probably should switch it over to the site plan view. And I've got my True North arrow pointing straight up, indicating obviously that the True North is, square to the screen as it is right now. And my building is off on some slightly skewed angle. That obviously would make it hard to draw and also would make it less inclined to fit onto a sheet really nicely and to be nice and square and rectilinear on the page. So what we want to do is we actually want to draw our building square on the page. So we're going to actually have to rotate the project and set Project North. So that Project North represents sort of a rectilinear view of the building, and True North would be off on a weird angle at that point. So Revit has these settings, or these tools built in. So if we go to the Manage tab, and under Position, we can relocate the project if we wanted, but I'm more interested in rotating True North or rotating Project North. You can also mirror the project here if you're doing like multiple houses or multiple views of the, or multiple sort of versions of the same building. You can actually take one and mirror it. You'll find like semi-detached houses, townhouses, things like that will actually sometimes do that in their plans. But in this case, we want to either rotate True North or rotate Project North. In this example, our True North is already straight up and down, so we would end up rotating our Project North. In order to do that, it's actually really straightforward, but to rotate your Project North, you do have to make sure your view is set with the orientation set to Project North. If I set my orientation to True North, which is what it's at right now, if I try to rotate my Project North, you'll see that it's grayed out and I can't actually do it while I'm in a True North view. So you do have to be in a Project North orientation to be able to rotate your Project North. So I'm going to take my file, go to the, again, Manage tab, go with Position, we're going to rotate Project North. So you can rotate it 90 degrees clockwise or counterclockwise, 180 degrees, or you can actually align your Project North to any line or plane or anything like that in the project. So I'm going to choose that, and I'm actually going to just pick one of these grid lines, or you could pick really anything that's essentially square to the building. So I'm just going to pick one of the grid lines, and Revit will actually rotate everything in the project to make that either a vertical or horizontal line. It'll rotate it to the nearest direction. And at that point, now everything's nice and square on the screen. Sorry about that. And you can just draw nice rectangular shapes and straight vertical and horizontal lines, and everything becomes really nice and easy to work with. You do get a little warning popping up saying Rotate Project North command has successfully rotated or processed how many of our elements are in the project. That's fine. Just a little warning, just a little note letting you know what's been going on. Now, that being said, I have seen in the past a lot of people actually rotate their Project North to one of their property lines. That may or may not work. It really depends if the building is parallel to the property line or not. And I know a lot of buildings that aren't parallel to their property lines, so trying to set your Project North to a property line is usually not the best option. You usually want it to be to, you usually want to rotate your Project North to one of the sort of primary faces or sides of your building, so you make the biggest benefit out of your horizontal and vertical axes. The other thing is, once you've rotated your Project North, you will want to grab your elevation tags and just rotate them. So you select one and just grab that little rotate, and it'll actually snap to be square to the building again. Because you don't want your elevation tags at an angle on the building. That's just not good. Your elevations end up being all wrong. They don't look right. You got full angles on the building, and it's just kind of messy. So that's how you rotate your project north. Now, rotating true north would be something similar, but because the CAD file came in with true north already set, I don't actually have to rotate true north. I can just choose true north here, and it rotates it back. So I can switch my orientation between true north and project north right here like this. But if I did, for some reason, need to rotate my true north, I can just come in with position, rotate true north, and I can actually move the sort of base point. There's a little blue grip there. I can move it to my north arrow, and then I can set true north to be any angle I actually want it to be. So I actually just set true north to be the wrong angle, so I'm going to Control Z to undo that. But that's pretty much how you rotate your true north if you needed to do that. Perhaps you started the project by designing the house, and then you brought your property lines in. If you do it that way, then your true north might not actually be straight up and down on the page, so you might actually need to reset your true north in that situation. The other reason you want to have true north set accurately is because it will affect your lighting. When you have the sun casting shadows on the building, you do want your orientations to be as correct as possible. So you do want your true north to be set in the proper direction. All right, well, I hope that helps some people out, and I guess I'll see you in the next video.